Okay, let's dive into this one. Imagine you get this 911 call, right? A husband sounds completely distraught, says his wife. She accidentally shot herself.
Yeah, it sounds like just a terrible, tragic accident at home. He's reporting it, sounds maybe confused, definitely in shock.
But then picture this. The first responders show up, and the scene they find, it just immediately tells a totally different story. Unsettlingly different.
It's this chilling contradiction from the very start. The scene just doesn't fit the script he's giving on the phone.
Exactly. Instead of, maybe one accidental shot, they find 2 gunshot wounds. On the victim, Brandy Johansson.
And 2 guns nearby, both 9mm handguns, which is, well, already unusual for a single accident scenario.
Right. And the positioning,
Okay.
the guns are apparently facing each other near her body. It's just bizarre.
It absolutely screams that something is off. Deeply wrong.
And then there's the caller himself, the husband, Keith Johansson. His story is he was in the shower, heard the shots, came out. That's why he couldn't help her right away.
But when the police actually see him, interact with him there at the scene,
Yeah.
he's completely dry, not wet at all.
Such a small detail, isn't it? But it's huge. It immediately contradicts his whole timeline.
It really does. I mean, simple physical facts like that, they speak volumes. If you say you just showered but you're dry, investigators are immediately going to question your credibility.
Challenges everything he said about where he was and what he was doing when it happened.
Precisely.
So yeah, that's the core of what we're unpacking today. This really disturbing case, the death of Brandy Johansson back on April 7th, 2018.
Our goal here is to kind of piece together what really happened using the investigation details we have from the sources.
Yeah, cutting through that initial deception. Because the truth here wasn't just hidden, it feels like it was actively covered up. But the evidence, physical and then later digital, just tore that story apart.
So like you said, it starts with that 911 call.
Huh.
Came in just before 11 a.m. Keith Johansson calling from their home in Florida.
And he's telling the dispatcher, "I found my wife, she's dead," framing it as this terrible accident, saying he thinks she shot herself.
Listening back to the call, you can hear him trying to sound distraught, saying things like, "She's gone. Oh God," projecting panic.
But there's also this hesitation, or maybe specificity, when the dispatcher asks about putting pressure on the wound.
Ah, yes. He suddenly claims he can't because he's wet from the shower, says he's slipped on the wood floors. It sounds rehearsed almost.
And he's unsure which gun was used.
Yeah.
Even though there are only 2 right there, it just felt off even over the phone.
Mm-hmm. And those gut feelings were pretty much confirmed. The second officers arrived at the house on Felter Lane.
They find Brandy in the bedroom, yeah. On the floor between the bed and a nightstand.
That's right. And the 2 9mm handguns are nearby, but positioned facing each other. Just a very strange detail for an accident or a suicide.
And confirming what the dispatcher might have suspected, and definitely contradicting Keith's story of maybe 1 shot, 2 clear gunshot wounds to Brandy's chest.
The scene itself was practically shouting that the 911 call wasn't the real story.
Absolutely. That physical evidence is often your most objective witness, isn't it?
It really is. 2 wounds mean 2 shots fired. Guns facing each other makes no accidental sense.
Yeah.
And a husband claiming he just showered but is bone dry. That undermines everything.
These weren't just minor inconsistencies. They fundamentally challenged his whole narrative from minute 1.
So Keith's initial story to the police on the scene, it just dug the hole deeper, really.
He stuck to it, though, didn't he? In the shower, heard boom, boom.
Yeah, and initially thought it was balloons popping, which, who hears 2 loud bangs in their house and thinks balloons, especially if you own guns?
Right. Then he says he came out and found Brandy.
And again, those immediate red flags for the police. He's dry. There are 2 shots. The weird gun placement, maybe even different guns involved based on the wounds. It all pointed away from his account.
Now, in the middle of all this horror, their little boy, just 6 years old, Ryland, he was in his room nearby.
Yeah, thankfully the officers made it a top priority to get him out of there safely, away from the scene, which they did quickly.
Smart move. So, as the investigation gets going, the detectives, they know they need to figure out the relationship here. What was going on between Keith and Brandy?
You really can't understand motive or context in a potential domestic situation without knowing the history. They'd been together since about 2014, got married just that year, 2018.
Brandy wasn't working, focused on their son. And Keith, he was unemployed too, living off some kind of settlement.
That's what the reports indicated, yeah, an injury settlement.
And when Keith described their marriage initially,
he painted this picture of perfection. Said it was perfect. Brandy was everything he wanted, just total domestic bliss.
But investigators pushed him on that.
They did, and he eventually admitted, okay, yeah, they argued sometimes, but he downplayed it, just stupid things. And he was adamant, absolutely no violence.
But then something else came out, a specific point of tension.
Yes. He brought up this accusation against Brandy, claimed she was involved in some kind of online thing, sharing videos, performing sexual acts, he said, without telling him.
And he called it cheating.
He did, explicitly described it as cheating. And suddenly, you have this powerful potential motive. Jealousy, maybe a feeling of betrayal, issues of control, things that can definitely escalate.
That online thing, accusation, that feels like the first real crack in his whole perfect marriage story.
Absolutely. It showed there was serious tension, a specific conflict, completely contradicting how he initially described things.
Okay, so the scene's weird, his story has holes, there's potential motive.
Yeah.
But the next big piece came from their son, didn't it? Ryland.
Yes, critically important. The child forensic team interviewed him later that day, and what Ryland said was just simple, honest, and completely devastating to Keith's account.
What did he tell them?
Ryland said he heard his mom scream, and then he heard 2 gunshots.
A scream first.
Yes, scream first, then the shots. He also said his dad told him that nobody was with his mom.
Wow, okay, hold on. Keith said he only heard shots, like balloons, while he was supposedly showering.
Exactly. But Ryland heard a scream before the shots. That sequence scream, then gunshots. It suggests something entirely different. A struggle, maybe?
Fear.
An interaction happening right before the guns went off.
Not just a sudden, unexpected accident she stumbled into, and Keith telling Ryland nobody was with her. That sounds like trying to control the narrative, even with his own kid, right after it happened.
It certainly looks that way. A scream implies she was conscious, distressed. It just obliterates Keith's story of hearing random bangs from the shower.
So what happened when they confronted Keith with what Ryland said about the scream?
His reaction was, well, telling. He flat out denied hearing any scream. And then, incredibly, he tried to undermine his own son's credibility.
No.
He claimed Ryland has been known to lie about a bunch of other different things. Though, interestingly, he didn't specifically say Ryland lied about hearing the scream itself.
Wow. Trying to discredit your 6-year-old son because his memory contradicts your story. That's desperate.
It really shifted the perception from a husband, maybe in shock, to someone actively trying to manage information and deflect suspicion.
And speaking of managing information, there were cameras, right? Surveillance cameras in the house.
Yes, another massive layer of suspicion. Cameras inside and outside. Potentially, they captured everything. The key to proving or disproving Keith's story.
So what was his explanation for those?
Oh, this is where he got really evasive. Just a string of excuses. They were off. They were offline, the batteries were dead. He didn't know how to access the footage.
Basically anything but here's the footage.
Pretty much. Deliberately obstructive. And while he's giving these excuses, remember, officers at the scene noted he was anxiously glued to his phone.
What just makes it look even more like he knows exactly what's on those cameras and is desperately trying to hide it, maybe even delete it from his phone.
Exactly. The suspicion skyrockets. It became crystal clear those cameras held the truth. Keith knew it, and getting that footage was now paramount.
But they didn't get it immediately. Before the video, the autopsy results came back just 2 days after the shooting.
And those findings were, frankly, horrifying. And they completely demolished any lingering possibility of Keith's initial accidental suicide story.
What did the medical examiner find?
Confirmed the 2 distinct gunshot wounds to Brandy's chest. But the nature of those wounds was the shocker. The first shot, it was from a non-lethal rubber bullet.
A rubber bullet? Seriously?
Seriously, lodged in her chest, non-lethal. The second shot, however, was lethal, a standard 9mm round, fired from about 3 feet away. It passed through her body and hit the nightstand behind her.
Okay, wait. A rubber bullet first, then a lethal bullet from 3 feet away. That's not an accident. That's not suicide.
Not even remotely plausible. And the distance, 3 feet, rules out self-inflicted for the lethal wound.
So what did Keith say when they confronted him about the rubber bullet? Did he have an explanation for that?
He actually did, and it was disturbing in itself. He claimed he intentionally loaded his guns that way, non-lethal rubber round first, then lethal rounds. Said it was for protection or intimidation.
Intimidation. Wow.
Yeah. So based on all this, the medical examiner formally ruled Brandy's death a homicide. No question she was killed by someone else.
That rubber bullet detail is just chilling. It suggests, I don't know, intent to injure first, control, before the kill shot.
It certainly paints a picture of escalation, moves it far away from a sudden event towards a more deliberate, drawn-out interaction, maybe a struggle, maybe an attack.
Okay. If you're finding this breakdown of evidence compelling, how investigators pick apart these details, you should definitely check out the Dead Quiet Crime podcast. We do deep dives like this all the time, looking at how the truth emerges from complex cases.
Absolutely. But the final, undeniable piece of the puzzle here, the thing that blew it all wide open, came about 3 weeks later. That's when investigators finally got their hands on the surveillance footage.
The evidence Keith tried so hard to hide.
And what it showed, it was just beyond disturbing. Footage from April 5th, just 2 days before Brandy died.
Who was on it?
Hours of Keith just relentlessly verbally abusing Brandy, making terrifying threats. The language was incredibly violent, controlling.
The source mentioned some specifics, right? Threats like, put fish hooks in that because it's not worth nothing now, and I'm going to kill you and go back.
Yes, and even suggesting making her take sleeping pills to cut off quick. It wasn't just arguing. This was prolonged, vicious, threatening behavior, documented for hours.
It shows this pattern of extreme control and, frankly, terror building up, and significantly after hours of this abuse on the 5th.
The video shows Keith removing the camera from the bedroom. He knew it was recording. He took it down after saying all that.
But he missed others, or put them back, because they got footage from the day she died, April 7th.
They did. And that footage was even more damning, if that's possible. First, it shows Brandy interacting lovingly with Ryland just shortly before she died. A heartbreaking contrast.
And then it shows Keith during the time he claimed to be in the shower, during the 911 call.
Completely demolishes his alibi. The video captures him near Brandy. He's saying things like, stay with me, trying to sound concerned for the camera maybe. But it also shows him running around the house frantically, and perhaps most chillingly, at one point, it captures him saying to Brandy, please take your life.
He said what while she's lying there injured?
Please take your life. And that's not all. The video also caught him actively hiding narcotics during this critical period while making the 911 call and supposedly tending to her.
Oh my God. So the video proved everything. He wasn't in the shower. He was there. He said that horrifying thing to her. He was hiding drugs. It destroyed every single lie he told.
Single-handedly, it showed his presence, his actions, his actual words during those moments. It proved he was involved and actively trying to cover things up, like the drugs, and maybe stage the scene.
It corroborated Ryland's account implicitly, too, about the scream happening before the shots, because Keith was there, not in the shower.
It was the irrefutable proof they needed. Game over for his story.
So, with that video evidence, arrest, charged with murder.
Yes, second-degree murder initially. Based on that overwhelming video proof, the facade was completely gone.
But he didn't stop trying to wriggle out of it, did he, even from jail?
No. His story kept changing. Phone calls from jail revealed him trying out new narratives. First, maybe a neighbor shot her. Then, unbelievably, he tried to pin it on their 6-year-old son, Ryland.
Blaming his own child. After the video evidence, that's just beyond belief.
And his own history started to get a closer look, too. Prior drug charges, a sexual assault charge surfaced, and diagnoses of mental health issues, including paranoia and anger management problems.
Which investigators thought might contribute to persecutory delusions, believing people were plotting against him.
Exactly. That kind of thinking, combined with the jealousy over the online thing, could certainly create a volatile mix. But given the concrete video evidence and his constant lying, these wild, shifting stories from jail carried zero weight.
They had the truth on tape. So it goes to trial. He turned down plea deals.
He did. Refused offers, including one for 25 years to life. Opted for a jury trial.
What was the defense strategy? How do you defend against that video?
They tried. They attempted to paint Brandy as a heroin addict, suggesting she was on a binge. Argued Keith acted in self-defense, claiming she attacked him with a gun first.
Which completely ignores the rubber bullet, the 2 shots, the distance, Ryland's scream, and, oh yeah, the entire video.
Pretty much. But the prosecution, naturally, leaned heavily on that video. The source material quotes them, saying they used it to show the jury that pretty much every word Keith Johansson said was not true.
And they confronted him directly on the stand.
Oh yes, cross-examination. Hit him with every lie, being wet from the shower, not knowing about the cameras, not hearing the scream, hiding the narcotics.
And he had to admit it, under oath.
He admitted he lied. Had to. Admitted lying to the police about all those key details. That admission, combined with the jury seeing the video evidence for themselves, it just gutted his entire defense.
The truth was just too clear. The scene, Ryland's simple words, the autopsy findings, and then that absolutely devastating video.
Overwhelming. After all the testimony and seeing the evidence, the jury didn't need long. They deliberated for less than 3 hours.
And the verdict?
Guilty. First-degree murder. The judge handed down the mandatory sentence. Life in prison, no possibility of parole in Florida.
It really brings you back to that initial question from the source, doesn't it? Was it the jealousy, the paranoia, or something else?
Based on everything, especially that horrifying video of the abuse beforehand, it really seems like his paranoia, maybe fueled by jealousy, just spiraled into this violent need for control that ended with him killing her.
Such a stark case. It shows how even a seemingly calm, controlled lie on a 911 call can just completely fall apart when faced with contradictory evidence. Physical evidence, a child's honesty, and undeniable video.
Really highlights the skill of investigators spotting those initial cracks, those inconsistencies, and just pulling on those threads until the whole fabrication unravels.
It makes you think, doesn't it? About the masks people wear, the hidden realities in relationships, how controlling behavior can escalate, and how crucial evidence, sometimes hidden in plain sight on a camera, can bring the truth to light.
The tiniest details mattered so much here. Not being wet, the guns facing each other, Ryland hearing a scream first, each one was a piece that didn't fit his story.
And then the video just laid it all bare. It wasn't just showing evidence, it felt like witnessing it.
Exactly. It's a powerful reminder that no matter how careful the lie, the truth often finds a way out, especially when investigators know where to look. Seeing that process unfold is really what we try to capture in these deep dives.
Absolutely. And if you want to see more breakdowns like this, how hidden information gets uncovered in complex cases, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. We unpack stories just like this one, piece by piece.